Colorado Springs may be a big city, but the recent murder of 17-year-old Riley Whitelaw has shaken the entire town to its core. Arrest documents describe a horrifying bloody scene at the store, a gruesome murder that allegedly occurred while customers were shopping. Riley was a high school student who worked part-time at a local Walgreens store. She was a gifted student who had a very busy schedule. When she wasn't in class, she was a member of the school color guard, and even found time to volunteer at the local animal shelter. As her mother said, she was a creative person. She loved to draw, write, dancing, and playing the guitar. Riley was not only talented and bright, but she was also empathetic, compassionate, and wise beyond her years. Riley was tragically robbed of her bright future when she was murdered on June 11th. In fact, the story of that day began a year earlier, when Riley was just 16 years old and started working a couple days a week at the local Walgreens store. Riley was said to have loved her job and got along with her co-workers. However, it wasn't long before Riley went to her management and said one of her co-workers was making her uncomfortable. 28-year-old Joshua Johnson. She said Johnson made some unwanted put-downs in her direction, and she was concerned and wants it to stop. Store manager Justin Zunino told her he would take the complaint seriously, but only spoke to Johnson, asking him to behave professionally in the workplace. We're talking about an adult male making unwanted sexual propositions to a minor, and all that happened is that his happened. He was politely asked to stop. No extra precautions were taken to protect Riley. A simple conversation had no effect on the man, and Riley was forced to work alongside him, who harassed her. For the next 9 months, Riley continued to work at the store. Johnson sold the same behavior, and the bosses did not respond to the young girl's complaints. It is alleged that there were no additional complaints from former employees for some time. Tell me, have you often experienced this kind of behavior at your job? And we go further. In March of 2022, a guy named Jacob Riley started working at the same Walgreens store as Riley. This way, Riley was more comfortable, but still she didn't tell her boyfriend about her co-worker's harassment. It was at this point that the situation began to escalate. Crystal Ishmael, one of the store managers, began to notice that Johnson seemed to be acting increasingly jealous, but the manager did nothing about it, much to her dismay. No effort was made by management to make any changes or provide protection. But once again, history repeated itself. In late May, Riley went to management again and reported Johnson's unwanted advances that made her uncomfortable. She specifically stated that things were worst when they worked the same shift. Riley: not to work the same schedule as Johnson. It seemed like a perfectly reasonable request if they didn't want to do anything else. She took her complaint to store manager Justin Zunino. As with the first complaint, no action was taken. When Riley again asked not to be assigned to a shift with Johnson, she was told that they could only honor her request by firing her, adding it would be impossible to schedule them separately. After a while, the harassment was so unbearable. Eventually, Riley again asked management to move her to a different shift. She was even willing to work more hours just to avoid Johnson. But management didn't care about Riley's requests. They pointed out that she had to work with Johnson and just put up with it. On June 11, 2022, Riley worked the same shift as Johnson. She left for her 30-minute break around 5:30 p.m. She was working on a Saturday, so she was likely in the middle of her shift. For those unfamiliar with the corporate structure of retail, breaks are usually distributed so as not to disrupt the service of the business. Usually, all of these breaks are pre-scheduled in your schedule, so you know what time approximately you're going to take a break. And if you're even a minute late coming back from your break, your supervisor usually knows about it, because that means that your coworker won't be able to go on his break, and it's a domino effect for all the other breaks that day. So in my opinion, the next part doesn't make sense. Crystal Ishmael, aka the manager, noticed that Riley didn't return from her break around 6 p.m., so she called Justin Zunino to come back to the store. He promptly returned a few minutes later. Ishmael claims that she looked for Riley throughout the store and assumed that she had left her shift. Zunino then decided to check the store's surveillance footage to see if Riley had left the building, but instead he discovers something much more disturbing. In the footage, Zunino sees Joshua Johnson carefully stacking boxes on top of each other until they completely blocked the security camera that overlooked the staff lounge. It was as if he was trying to prevent people from seeing the action he was about to take. He noted the time Johnson started doing this. It was hours before Riley disappeared. Zunino also noticed that when he returned to the store, someone had taped the windows in the break room with paper so that he could not directly look inside the break room. In addition, he noticed that the door to the restroom was taped shut with a closed sign. This was a public restroom, and it was unusual for such a sign to be hung while the store was still open. At the time, he didn't think much of it, but as he watched Johnson cover the cameras, he realized that something very wrong had happened. Finally, Zunino went to the break room, being the first to go in after Riley left for his break. Apparently, no one thought to check the break room when they were looking for Riley all over the store. When he opened the door, he immediately saw Riley on the floor with blood everywhere. He was completely dumbfounded, then ran out to call 911 at 6:55 p.m. Meanwhile, Crystal Yishmael said that when she was looking around the store for Riley, when she noticed a strong odor of bleach coming from the dumpster, when she tried to find out more, a male voice told her not to open it or come any closer because he was changing clothes. She promptly sought assistance from Zunino, but upon her return, the area was deserted with only an empty bleach bottle on the ground. Police were called to the scene around 7 p.m. The police statement revealed that Riley had suffered significant neck trauma, with blood present around her head and on the floor, along with additional stains. During the subsequent meeting in the office, Zunino and Yishmael provided the police with details of their observations throughout the day, including surveillance footage. They also informed the officers about Johnson's possessive behavior and inappropriate actions towards the victim. Although Johnson was already a prime suspect, he was nowhere to be found. Officers gathered statements from customers and co-workers, discovering that around 5:44 p.m., a customer in the deodorant department heard screaming and what seemed like a door or locker slamming. Despite similar reports from other witnesses, no one investigated, setting the assumed time of the attack at 5:44 p.m. Shockingly, the staff room remained unchecked for an hour. Law enforcement located Johnson the following day as he walked along Interstate 95 near Trinidad, Colorado, more than 100 miles from the crime scene. Upon picking him up, officers observed scratches on his face and hands, consistent with defensive wounds. Johnson was taken into custody without incident and admitted to officers that he had a past crush on Riley, but claimed he was no longer interested due to his relationship with Crystal Yishmael. There is uncertainty regarding the truthfulness of this claim, as Crystal did not disclose it to the police and other interviewees were silent on the matter. Johnson made an unlikely assertion that he was in the break room after Riley's murder, stumbled in her blood, chose not to alert the police but opted to clean himself up. He stated that he went to the store, returned home and changed clothes, denying any involvement in blocking the camera despite clear video evidence. Joshua Johnson was officially arrested and charged with first-degree murder, held without bail pending trial. The investigation continues, with Johnson scheduled to appear in court on August 26th, solidifying him as the prime suspect and likely perpetrator of Riley's murder. Media outlets have speculated about whether he is the sole perpetrator in Riley's tragic death. Walgreens and its management should have taken more substantial measures to ensure Riley's safety. Reports of sexual harassment should have been treated with gravity, and Johnson's inappropriate conduct should not have been tolerated in the workplace. The negligence in prioritizing Riley's safety and well-being at the workplace ultimately contributed to her untimely demise. As of now, Walgreens has not issued a public statement regarding Riley's murder, although they have indicated the provision of grief counseling for employees and the temporary closure of the store. It remains uncertain if any legal actions will be taken against the store management, and whether the company will implement broader measures to prevent such incidents in the future. In response to this tragedy, Riley's family has launched a fundraising campaign on GoFundMe to establish a scholarship in her name. They aim for swift justice and express gratitude for the support received from the local and international community. The latest update on the high school senior's death at a local Walgreens store has prompted people to contribute to the GoFundMe fund created in memory of 17-year-old Riley Whitelaw. The organizers aspire to utilize the funds for a scholarship in her name and potentially support genetic research, an area Riley was passionate about. Currently, nearly $30,000 has been raised. In a recent development, 28-year-old Joshua Johnson was officially charged with first-degree murder during his initial court appearance. Riley's lifeless body was discovered in the break room of a Walgreens located at the intersection of Centennial and Vindicator Streets. Johnson was subsequently located and arrested near Walsenburg, almost 100 miles from the crime scene. Court documents obtained by 11 News revealed that both Riley and Johnson were employees at the same Walgreens. Managers informed the police that nearly a year prior, Riley had raised concerns about Johnson, who had made her uncomfortable with unwanted advances earlier that day. Despite requesting not to be scheduled alongside Johnson, when Riley sought to increase her work hours, the store insisted she work with him. Walgreens declined to comment on these revelations but stated that they provide counseling and support for their employees. The reopening date for the store remains undisclosed. This story has come to an end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and write comments, as it motivates us to make more videos for you. Also check out our other videos in the playlist. All the best.